Hello everyone, it's Raza von Werder from the University of Mother God Church, and I'm going to talk about my life again. Let's go to when I ran away from home, and this photographer took me across country from New York to California by the name of DIENES. I'll do a video on him later and show you the book he did on Marilyn Monroe called Marilyn Mon Amour. DIENES. He was unbearable. He was middle-aged, and I found him very obnoxious and unattractive, and of course he was trying to do sex to me the whole time we were together. And at first I pretended that I would do it, and being an older man, he was like 55, for some reason he couldn't get erected. And so I was saved by the bell, or saved by the balls. And then when we were away, like a couple days drive away from New York, and I knew that he couldn't dump me too easily, because once we were out of the vicinity of New York and on our way west, I decided that I wasn't going to put out. And that's when the trouble started. He was very frustrated, but he was obnoxious. But anyway, wasn't planning to talk about DIENES, but my first husband, and it's very depressing, and I hate to think about him. The only thing good about him is that about a week ago, when was it? What day was it? He was, wait. Okay, on the January the 2nd, yes, January the 2nd, he was delivered from purgatory. That's my first husband, Stanley Everts. I had two husbands, both of whom died. My first husband, Stanley Everts, I married when I was 17, when I ran away to California. My second husband I married when I was middle-aged, and we were together, not married, but we were together as best friends for 16 years, and he was a really good, wonderful, supportive, angel man. The first one was a demon, a devil. He didn't look like a devil. You couldn't tell he was a devil, but he was a devil. So DIENES leaves me on the street in Venice, California, when it was a slum. And I have nowhere to turn, no one to go to, no one to call. I have no friends. This is how evil men are, people are. Not all men, not all women, people in general, how evil they can be. He knows that I have no relatives and no friends. And I had modeled for him for a day, and he owed me $60. And he leaves me with the $60 on a street in Venice, California, with no money except the $60. And with that, I have to figure out a way to survive. So what do? Call home? No, I don't call home. I get a rooming house where the guy rips me off. It was like $40 or $45 for the week. $45. Now you multiply all that money by 5. You multiply that by 5. So it was a ripoff, because this was a horrible room, and he had a hole. The guy who rented me the room, he was vile. And he rented me this room, which was connected to a bathroom down the hall, where he had drilled a hole, where he could see me sleeping on my bed. Well, of course, that hole was covered. I covered it with tape. And he would go into the bathroom and masturbate, looking through the peephole at me. I mean, he should have given me the room for free if that's he was going to use me for his masturbation fantasy. See? But he didn't. So he probably had that room for any female that would show up by herself, and he would use her for his masturbation fantasy. But so I had brown hair at the time, so I took the rest of my money and bought some bleach. And in the sink, there was a sink in my room. I bleached my hair as best I could to come up blonde. It didn't come up blonde the first bleaching. You have to bleach it 2 or 3 times to get it to be platinum blonde like I wanted to. And I took this Salvation Army bikini, cotton bikini that Creepazoid, Andre de DIENES had bought me. He didn't take, I had no clothes except like 2 outfits because my girlfriend had stolen all my clothes. And he took me, instead of taking me to a store, a real store, and buying me some halfway decent clothes, even if it was a cheap store, he took me to the Salvation Army where you had all secondhand clothes. And I bought a couple of pairs of pants that went to the knees, I think, or I remember one of them anyway, one, and this cotton bikini that I remember that. Yeah, I looked good in the bikini. I had a beautiful body. And all what I did was I just left the rooming house with this pervert, and I just went to the beach. It was right by the beach, 2 blocks away, and I walked down the beach, and I walked and walked and walked, many, many beaches. I think it was about 10 beaches, and I came to the yeah, oh, that's right, maybe it was 20, yes, from Venice to Santa Monica would have been more than 10 beaches. It's probably 20 beaches. I walked and walked and walked until I came to the Santa Monica Pier. I climbed up on the pier, and I looked down on what's known as Muscle Beach. And there were people playing volleyball, guys playing volleyball on the beach. And there was one good-looking guy. There were a few decent-looking guys. And so one of the guys came up, and that was Stanley Everts. He was tall, he was 6'2", thin, he's in good shape, he lifted weights. And he had slick black hair. He was attractive, but I wasn't attracted to him. Even though he was good looking and handsome, I wasn't attracted to him. So he asked me if I wanted a drink. And yeah, of course I was thirsty. After 20 beaches, I had maybe, I don't remember if I had any money on me, probably not. Probably left it in that room. So I said yes. To make a long story short, he got me into his clutches. Now, like I said, I didn't want him, but you know how men are. They always want us. You know, especially if you're young and pretty. You know, if you're older and he's young and gorgeous, he might be a little bit slow. But when he's older, and this guy was in his 30s, I'm trying to think how old he was. I think it was 34. I think it was 34, and I was 16. Okay, so he gets me to his apartment, and he has to insist on doing sex to me, of course. And so now he gets me out of that rooming house, that horrible rooming house. After I had only been there for a couple of days, he got me out of there and had me move in with him. And I asked him to help me get on my feet. So he pretended he was going to help me get on my feet. And I said, I really love being a waitress. And if you could loan me $500, I could get an apartment and I could work as a waitress and support myself. Because you could in those days. Well, even today, if you work the right place, you could support yourself. You wouldn't be well off. You'd be just barely making it probably, unless you worked at some super duper exclusive restaurant and made a lot of money. Yeah, then that's different. But, you know, at the average restaurant, you know, you could survive. That's what I wanted to do. And he wouldn't loan me the $500. He wouldn't loan it to me. He pretended he was going to help me. He was stalling me. So he took me to a couple of places to maybe rent an apartment. But somehow it just didn't work out. And to make a long story short, we hung out, and he did a lot of nice things, which men usually do when you're on a hunt, sort of like a beginning. He took me out a lot. It was summer. By the way, he was a school teacher. And so it was summer, so he was off. So he took me to Disneyland in Los Angeles, Disneyland. He took me to, I can't think of the names. They were like resort places, you know, entertainment places. Took me to dinners. Always insisted on making love, and I never wanted to make love to him. I never, ever was turned on by him, ever. And introduced me to his friends, the school teachers. And we used to play volleyball, which I loved. And we always, when we had sex, we used the withdrawal method, you know, where the guy does it to you and then he takes it out before he has an orgasm. And that prevents a pregnancy, of course, you know. Well, summer was coming to a close, and he told me, he said, well, I am a school teacher, and I cannot just live with a female without being legally married to her. I said, but I don't love you. He said, oh, that will happen. That love will come. Yeah, right. And it was after we got married that he told me, well, no, I didn't get into the marriage bit yet. Let me explain it to you. So, yeah, so he wouldn't help me get on my feet. I had no one. I was strapped. I was all alone. So I had to say yes when he insisted that he had to get married. We had to get married. So I remember we went to get the license, and then he took me to a small church out in a valley somewhere. And speaking of red, I wore a beautiful red dress. Imagine wearing a red dress for your wedding, marriage, you know. So we got the license, and then we went to this Protestant church for the religious wedding. Then he took me to Malibu for the honeymoon. Well, that was a disaster, because that's when he trapped me into getting pregnant. He was doing sex to me, and instead of withdrawing, he had an orgasm inside me. And I go, what are you doing? He says, well, we're married now, so it's okay. I said, but you didn't ask me for permission. I don't want to get pregnant. I had just run away from home. I had been dumped off. This guy wouldn't help me unless I married him legally. And now he tricks me, because on that very day, on our honeymoon, I got pregnant. And my baby was born exactly 9 months to the day from the day he did it to me, being unwilling to be pregnant. So he forced a pregnancy on me, to be continued, talking about my first husband, Stanley.